Well, as for the second season running, we were waiting to find out the result of the FA Cup final. How delighted were you come Saturday evening?
Yeah, very pleased. I mean, obviously exciting. It all went right down to the wire, and anything could happen there. At one point you're thinking it's going to be penalties here, and it's in the lap of the gods then. And obviously Palace going in front was a bit of a shock. And it was Jason Punchin that did it. Thanks, Jace. But delighted when United came back. For us, that it meant we went to the group stages of the Europa League, which again is another step forward for the club.
Yeah, just how big is it to know we're going straight in at the group stages?
Oh, it's massive because you can do very little planning until you know where you are in that context. Last season, we were playing Europa League qualifying matches whilst we still had friendlies to play, and essentially we were still in training camp. And you're also playing those games during the transfer window. So there's a whole host of issues that surround the fact that if you have to play in the qualifiers, you've really got your work cut out. And obviously to a certain extent we were lucky last year because we drew Vitesse and Midtjylland. I really felt for the clubs that were travelling, to Azerbaijan and places like that. So to miss that stage and be able to go straight into the groups, guaranteed 6 games, and be able to plan all the travel around it and get a proper pre-season done is so important, and it does give you a much better chance because you're far better prepared for it when it comes.
Has it been a busy couple of days then since the FA Cup final, in that now you can really start to plan for next season?
Yeah, I mean, we've been planning for quite some time with regards to pre-season camps and pre-season training, but everything's been on hold, and now we're able to confirm things, and particularly the sort of second half of pre-season, where we will have a training camp. We'll be able to complete that and get back and prepare for the European Games and the start of the season in a much more logical fashion than we were last year.
7 seasons of progression then. Just how incredible has this rise been?
It's been absolutely magnificent. We've had something to celebrate virtually every year. Well, we have every year had something to celebrate, whether it's promotion from League One to the Championship, back-to-back promotions, record numbers of points, etc., Europe qualifiers, now Europe group stage. But that's important because it's what we intended to do. It's what we set out to do, was to incrementally get better and better and better until such time as the club had grown to the point where we were a very well established and a very stable Premier League club. And in the last 3 years we have established ourselves in the top 8 of the Premier League. We always said that when we got to the Premier League we didn't want to just survive, we didn't just want to hang on in there, that we wanted to make an impact. And I think over the last 3 years we've done that. We've gone from 8th to 7th to 6th, and whilst you could look at it and say we're only a few points off Champions League, we know there's the capacity to do that. We know that's possible, and hopefully over the next 5 years we can continue to grow and build a club that's ready for the Champions League if and when that door opens for us.
I was going to say the progression hasn't just been on the pitch, has it? The club has just built itself up off it as well, and that's probably a key factor in the club's rise.
I think it's vitally important. I think when we've hit troubled times, when there's been a little bit of scaremongering, a bit of turmoil, being able to continually focus on the vision, focus on the plan, not waver off that plan, and stay on track, has brought us through those times. We had a shaky period just after Christmas time. We had a run of bad results. There was no pressure, no one, there was no major headlines of panic and disaster. We worked our way through that on the pitch, and we came through with a really good run towards the end, which has achieved 6th position, and we do that off the pitch as well. This really is a club effort. Every person in this club contributes to that 6th place finish, and that's the way we have to continue in order to remain stable.
And one of those contributors, of course, is Ronald Koeman, the manager. Just how impressed have you been with the job he's done? over these 2 seasons?
I think again it goes back to when you appoint a manager, what are you looking for in a manager? One of the major things is you're looking for a manager who buys into the culture and the belief and the passion and the values of the club. And we've had 3 managers who've had that. So that's important because you can't be pulling in different directions. So picking that manager is very important in the first place, and then you've got a chance to move forward. Now Ronald ticked all the boxes, met the criteria. Fans will probably remember when we recruited Ronald, it was done very much under the radar, no big headlines. As we've seen recently with some of the other clubs in the Premier League, quietly done, stick to the plan, get the manager in, and then start building a team around him, and cooperate with the manager in terms of player recruitment. You know, very quietly, just get on with the job. And we found a manager who buys into it and is a good coach and a tactician. We've built a squad that meets the profile of the club. We want to play exciting football, we want to play good quality football, play out from the back. All the things that Ronald's passionate about and wants. So there's a meeting of minds, if you like, there, and that's very important. He's done a great job and will continue to do so.
He mentioned there would be talks between the two. How are they going?
Talks are ongoing all the time. There's never a point where you say on such and such a date we'll start talking. So yeah, there's negotiating contracts and getting down to the nitty-gritty, and there's conversations that go on all the time about planning for the future. Ronald and I have been talking for a long time about building towards a summer transfer window. As you've seen, the extension of contracts of our own players to consolidate the core of the team going forward is another big step forward. Now, you don't just do that on any given day. That's something that I would sit down with Ronald and with Ross Wilson, the head of recruitment, and we will discuss that over a long period of time. So all those conversations are about the future, about what we're building for. And those things are very important. There's been a lot of talk recently. Ronald himself has mentioned the idea that he sat down with us at the board level and talked about a 5-year plan. There's no point in going headlong into contract negotiations about finance and money unless you're all on the same wavelength about where it's going. So if Ronald is committing himself to the club for a longer period of time, it's important that we talk about our ambitions being aligned and that we are all still trying to achieve the same things. So those discussions have been ongoing, and we're now at a point, as Ronald has said himself, that actually getting down to the detail of the contract, which is where agents and lawyers get involved, is at the end of the season, which is where we are now, and they're ongoing, and everything's going very positively at the moment.
How big an impact could the news that Virgil van Dijk, Fraser Forster, James Ward-Prowse have all committed their futures long term to the club have in building this summer as well?
Very important, and that's not finished. I'm still talking to agents of our current players to get more of those signatures on paper. It's the next step for us. We've had 2 summers when the focus has been on players leaving, and we want to turn that corner and look at the focus of players committing for the long term, buying into the long term plan. And the vision for the future, and signing longer contracts because they want to be here. So we're in the process of all of that as well. As soon as that final whistle blows at the end of the season, then me and my staff kick into gear on all of these things, and you really are chasing around and meetings in London, moving around, even going abroad to get things underway as quickly as you can before the transfer window opens and it really gets to the silly stage, and hopefully we can settle down and be completed as near as we can to the front end of the window rather than the back end. So it's very, very busy at the moment, even though the season's over and everyone seems to think it all quietens down. It actually gets very busy, but at the moment the focus is on getting our players to commit longer term, to keep the core of the squad together, and then the fine-tuning of that squad, which Ronald and I have talked about now for some months in terms of what our requirements are. Not massive requirements. This is a good squad, it's a good team, we've got depth in the squad. The important thing is to keep that together and then fine-tune it with the little bits that we might have missing, rather than wholesale change and big changes. There's enough teams in this summer transfer window going to have to do that. Hopefully we can just keep things nice and stable and prepare properly for the next season.
Yeah, last year we saw a few early signings, so to speak, done before, signed before the 1st of July, almost ready to join. Could that perhaps then be different this year?
Yeah, I think it's different in the fact that the early signings so far are Virgil van Dijk, James Ward-Prowse and Fraser Forster. That's a good sign. That's a good sign. And at the moment there are a few more that we would like to do that with, but at the same time we are starting to look at targets for the summer. And as I say, hopefully we can do those things quickly. The only problem you get in a year like this is the Euros, and then people wait, because if they've got players at the Euros, sometimes they think if they have a good Euros, there might be better interest in them. Of course, there's always a gamble if they have a poor Euros, then nobody's interested. But the Euros will also throw, because there will be lots and lots of scouts out there. Maybe scouts who don't do as much due diligence as we do. We know what we want, but some people do react to players who have a good tournament, or players who've just jump out of the paper that they haven't seen before because they score a couple of goals in the early rounds and they're tempted to buy them. So it does skew the transfer window a little bit, but we know what our plans are, and obviously we will be scouting the Euros, but we'll be scouting players we know all about anyway.
You talk about the Euros, obviously waiting on group stage qualification. How difficult has that made things to plan for pre-season and where we go and where we head off to?
Yeah, it's not easy when you've got, what you want to achieve is a lot of international players in your squad. I've always said, to be at the top end of the Premier League, your whole squad have to be international players, and that's where we are at the moment. Not just the Euros, but the Toulon tournament, where we had 3 players in the under-21s last night. So that means they need a rest, they need to come back a bit later. So you probably have quite a young squad of players in the first part of pre-season. And that planning, that first part, is difficult because you've got players returning from the Euros. You don't know when they're going to get knocked out of the competition, so you don't know when their break's going to start. And then you've got the UEFA League, which are waiting for qualification stage, etc. So we've penciled in a training camp early in pre-season, which will probably be a young squad with the players that don't play in the Euros. That's likely to be in the US. It's not confirmed yet, but it would be a short, sharp one, probably a week. And then as the players return from Euros duty, back in full training at Staplewood, and then probably the Dutch camp that we did last year, which makes planning easy because you've done it before. You know the venue, you know the hotel. That makes it a lot easier. And now we know our fate in the UEFA League, we can start to nail all those things down. So we're now at that stage where training camp's okay. We know what our dates are going to be and who's coming back when. Now it's confirming things like pre-season friendlies and so on, and the build up to the season once we get back to St Mary's, towards the end.
Seen 3 first-team players commit their long-term futures. We obviously had the news last week of 5 players signing professional deals. Marcus Barnes signing a 4-year deal. The future's looking bright, and it also brings me on to the loan players and sending more players out on loan this season. Was that perhaps a change in the club's philosophy?
Yeah, it's a consequence of success. When you strengthen, widen, and deepen the first-team squad, and achieve success in the Premier League, it's harder for players to actually get in the squad, get in the team and play regularly. And what's important at this stage of their development is that they do get good quality games under their belt. It's something that we take very seriously. We haven't loaned players out in the past, one, because they've come completely through on the journey and got into our team, and secondly because you have to be very careful about the kind of loans you do. And we were not too happy with the loans we did last year. So we're looking into ways and means of making that a lot more systematic in the way we deal with things. So at the moment, part of what I'm doing is meeting with other clubs, Championship clubs, League One clubs, who would like to develop partnerships with us. So we get a little bit more control over the number of games that our players get when they go on loan, the kind of club they're playing for, the kind of style of play, and the coaching that they're getting. Because the loan is not just about the 90 minutes on a Saturday, it's everything they do from Monday to Friday at the other club. And we'd like to think we can find loans for them which mirror the kind of work that we do, which is difficult. But because we've got the status of where we are in the Premier League, and our reputation of an academy is very, very good. The ability to loan players, to quality clubs is quite good. The other thing we might look at, or are looking at, is the potential of a partnership with a club in Europe, so that our players can also get the benefit of a European type experience, and almost, if you like, by loaning them, get the same kind of experience that someone like Jordi Clasie got whilst he was playing in Holland before he came to us. So there's a lot of work being done on that front as well, to make sure the loans are meaningful and a stepping stone into our team.
What are the aims for next season then?
Aims for next season? Again, we'd like to think what we've done this season has taken us another incremental step towards the establishing ourselves in the top six. So that will be the first step in doing that. So again, we'd like to repeat a top six finish. We'd like to consolidate the fact that we can play in Europe every year, but also build and develop in such a way that if there's an opportunity to break into that top four, then we need to be ready for it. Not saying we'll do it next season, but we need to be ready if an opportunity occurs. I think it's going to be a very interesting summer and a very interesting season next year, because probably 5 or 6 of the traditional top 6 clubs, or big 6 clubs, including Spurs, who now have broken into that Champions League spot, are going to have to build and rebuild quite significantly. New managers at the top end, managers moving around, normally is accompanied by big changes in players and so on. And those 6 clubs are all going to be competing for the same level of player, and they're not all going to get them. So the idea that they're all going to buy their way back and become the normal pecking order again, I don't think it's going to happen. And if it does, it won't be for a few years. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for clubs like us.
I was going to ask you about Leicester City and their incredible season. That also comes into play again next year. And what did you take from it this year, from what they achieved?
I think for me it's quite fascinating, because the kind of plaudits they were getting, albeit from a very lofty position at first or second in the league most of the season, were the kind of plaudits we were getting 3 years ago. We were kind of the upstarts who shook a few people and finished 8th, and we were getting incredible plaudits because it was kind of, well, that's really good, and we always felt there was more, and I think with Leicester, I think Leicester had an incredible momentum that was very difficult to stop. So having gone on a fantastic run to avoid relegation, where I think Claudio Ranieri did a great job, was he didn't change much. He just kept the momentum going. So during that run in the previous season, they developed a fantastic team spirit, a real die-hard attitude, which they carried on into the next season with a very minimal amount of tweaking, and so their belief grew and grew and grew. But I think what happened was that the belief that the big 6 clubs or whatever are invincible died away, and I think we started that, and I'm not trying to claim the glory for Leicester, as they had the ability to take that to another level. But I think 1 or 2 other clubs, West Ham for instance, believed that they weren't invincible and that they could beat teams. They could beat teams on the road, and I think there's a mentality shift which has been coming for 3 years, and Leicester have actually taken advantage of it in the circumstances, which is that we don't believe there's a pecking order. We don't believe that all we're here for is to survive in the Premier League and take the TV money. 40 points mentality, I think, is changing. I think there are now 5 or 6 clubs, Stoke's another one, who have shown this year that we can actually take these guys on and take them on in their own backyards. Just think of some of the defeats that those top 6 clubs have had at home, and I think that's an indication to me that things aren't just going to return to normal. So I think Leicester have laid down the gauntlet for a lot of us to try and follow. A lot of people will believe, and I'm sure our fans believe, if Leicester can do it, why can't we? And that's a worry for the big clubs. That's a kind of rebellion that they would like to put down, and I can't see how they're going to do that. They will spend a lot of money, I'm sure, but I think the landscape's changed, and I think that there is an opportunity for the top half of the Premier League to become much more competitive than it used to be, and there will be teams who want to join that. There will be teams who've not had a great season. Everton would be one. They're looking to build a new ground. They've got new ownership, looking to invest. So I can just see the Premier League getting better and better, and I think that will help the clubs that play in the Champions League to perform better in the Champions League. Even though there's a contra opinion that says it's too hard in the Premier League, you can't do both. But I think if you manage it right, the fact that you've got to play now as a top team in this league every week at your best, I think that you should carry that into the Champions League in the way that Leicester carried the relegation fight into winning the Championship.
I was going to ask, the challenge of managing the Europa League and Premier League for us next season, is that almost a challenge the club will relish?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the thing is, you can talk yourself out of it. You can talk yourself into, well, it's pointless trying, we're going to have a bad season because we're in the Europa League. Or you can talk yourself into it and say it can be done. You can believe that you're good at managing your players' rest and recovery time, that you're good at your sports science, your backup, how you travel. Pay attention to the detail. Small margins. Get those right, and it's manageable. After all, Championship clubs do it every year, the number of games that they play. And I just think at the moment we're looking at 6 extra games. So let's see how we fit them in. How do we recover the squad between games? What do we do in terms of travel and so on? And work at making it work. Because the alternative is you just persuade yourself that you're not going to do it, and if you do that, you won't.